Hi, I'm Marlene Gonzalez of the Middle Country Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to episode 21 in our History Bites series. Today we will discuss Ellis Island, which processed millions of immigrants to the United States for over 60 years. Prior to 1890, individual states, rather than the federal government, regulated immigration into the United States. Castle Garden, which is now Castle Clinton, located in the Battery of Manhattan, served as the New York State Immigration Station from 1855 to 1890. Approximately 8 million immigrants passed through its doors, mostly from Northern European countries. This constituted the first large wave of immigrants to settle and populate the U.S. In the 1800s, rising political instability, economic distress, and religious persecution plagued Europe, fueling the largest mass human migration in the history of the world. The reasons they left their homes in the Old World included war, drought, famine, and religious persecution, and all had hopes for a greater opportunity in the New World. Around 1890, it became apparent that Castle Garden was ill-equipped and unprepared to handle the mass influx, leading the federal government to construct a new immigration station on Ellis Island. During construction, the barge office in the Battery was used for immigrant processing. The new structure on Ellis Island began receiving arriving immigrants on January 1, 1892. Annie Moore, a teenage girl from Ireland, accompanied by her two younger brothers, made history as the very first immigrant to be processed at Ellis Island. Over the next 62 years, more than 12 million immigrants would arrive in the United States via Ellis Island. From 1900 to 1914, the peak years of Ellis Island's operation, an average of 1,900 people passed through the immigration station every day. Most successfully passed through in a matter of hours, but others could be detained for days or weeks. Most immigrants entered the United States through New York Harbor, although there were other ports of entry in cities such as Boston, Philadelphia, Baltimore, San Francisco, and New Orleans. The great steamship companies like the White Star, Red Star, Cunard, and Hamburg America lines played a significant role in the history of Ellis Island and immigration as a whole. First and second class passengers arriving in New York Harbor were not required to undergo inspection process at Ellis Island. Instead, these passengers received a brief inspection aboard the ship, the theory being that if a person could afford to purchase a first or second class ticket, they were affluent and less likely to become a public charge in America due to medical or legal reasons. However, regardless of class, sick passengers or those with legal problems were sent to Ellis Island for further inspection. This scenario was far different for third-class passengers, commonly referred to as steerage. These immigrants traveled in crowded and often unsanitary conditions near the bottom of the steamships, often spending up to 2 weeks seasick in their bunks during the rough Atlantic Ocean crossing. After the steamship docked in the harbor, typically along the west coast of Manhattan, steerage passengers would board a ferry to Ellis Island for their detailed inspection. After inspection, many immigrants remained in New York, while others traveled by barge to railroad stations in Hoboken or Jersey City, New Jersey, on their way to destinations across the country. If an immigrant's papers were in order and they were in reasonably good health, the Ellis Island inspection process lasted 3 to 5 hours. The inspections took place in the registry room or the Great Hall, where doctors would briefly scan every individual for obvious physical ailments. Doctors at Ellis Island soon became very adept at conducting these 6-second physicals. By 1916, it was said that a doctor could identify numerous medical conditions by simply glancing at a person. The ship's manifest log, initially filled out in the ship's port of departure, contains the immigrant's name and his or her answers to 29 questions. This document was used by legal inspectors at Ellis Island to cross-examine during the legal inspection. Contrary to popular belief, interpreters of all major languages were employed at Ellis Island, making the process efficient and ensuring that records were accurate. Despite the island's reputation as the island of tears, the vast majority of immigrants were treated courteously and respectfully free to begin their new lives in America after only a few short hours on Ellis Island. Only 2% of arriving immigrants were excluded from entry. The two main reasons for exclusion were a doctor diagnosing an immigrant with a contagious disease that could endanger the public health, or a legal inspector was concerned that an immigrant could become a public charge or an illegal contract laborer. After World War I, U.S. embassies were established in countries all over the world. The necessary paperwork and medical inspections were completed at the consulate, quickly replacing the Ellis Island inspection process. After 1924, the only passengers brought to Ellis Island were those who had problems with their paperwork, as well as war refugees and displaced persons needing assistance. Ellis Island remained for 3 more decades, serving a multitude of purposes, including a World War II detention center for enemy merchant seamen. After immigration reception was moved to New York City proper in 1943, Ellis Island continued to serve as a detention station until 1954. In November of 1954, the last remaining detainee on Ellis Island, a Norwegian merchant seaman named Arne Petersen, was released, and Ellis Island was officially closed by the U.S. government. Ellis Island was reopened to sightseers in 1976 by the National Park Service. The main building and other structures on the island were restored in the 1980s and opened in 1990 as the Ellis Island Immigration Museum. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's episode. If you would like to learn more about how the Middle Country Public Library can help you trace your roots, please contact the Adult Services Desk. If you enjoyed this episode, please click like, and if you watched it on YouTube, hit subscribe. Thanks so much, and we'll see you all next time.